WDBO. How you doing today, Larry?
We're doing fantastic, Josh. Glad to be here. It's 3 o'clock. Hi, folks. I'm Larry Perry, and you're tuned in to the Magic Mechanic Radio Show. So new listeners know this is an interactive automotive and mechanical advice program where we help you with your car problems and just about anything that is bolted together. Let's put it that way. So anything mechanical. And it's been our pleasure to do so for over 31 years. Me personally, I'm an automotive shop owner, and I've been a master auto technician since 1982. To make the program work, we need your calls. And the lines are open at 844-580-9326. And remember, all your calls and car questions get indexed and placed on our new YouTube channel. So other folks searching for answers like yours will be able to get the same needed information. Think about that. Folks will be able to play back your car question years and years and years from now. And so I guess you'll live in infamy. Dash warning lights, poor fuel economy, oil consumption, AC not working correctly, vibrations, warranty questions, antique, classic car issues on any gas, hybrid, electric, or diesel vehicle. Also remember, I have a complete database of all the listed recalls and technical service bulletins from around 1980 to current. And all you need to do is give us a call, touch base with us during the open mics. We look forward to that, and we hope today is the same. You can also ask a car question by emailing me, larry@magicmechanic.com. Also, I can't guarantee how many of them we'll be able to work in, but if I can't fit them in, I will definitely answer them by the first of the week. And today, we are actually going to start the program with an email that was sent to me at larry@magicmechanic.com. And the reason we want to start with this is because it's impacted a lot of different people. And this is from Jim in Altamont, and he's got a 2004 GM truck. And he said he was affected by the flood. The truck is still in water, and he can't get it out yet until the water recedes. But he says that the water is only just below the door line, which is a good thing, and his wheels are actually half covered in water. And his question is, are the brakes going to be affected if it sets in the water for several days? Jim, it's probably not going to hurt anything. They will, in a few days, your rotors will glaze over with some rust. And they'll do that by a lawn sprinkler as well. But everything down there is actually pretty sealed. The only thing that I would really be concerned with is your differentials. You are definitely going to want to go ahead and have those serviced immediately. See, your differential, I don't know whether this is a 2 or a 4-wheel drive. It says 2-wheel drive. But your rear differential in this vehicle has a vent. And what will happen is when you go through water, that water will get into the differential. And you definitely want to address that as soon as possible. As far as it getting in through the axles, I doubt very seriously that you get it through any water in through the axle seals unless they were physically already leaking. Now, the other thing that you do got to kind of hope that you don't run into is anything, your intake system. We just hope that is above the water line, that the engine didn't engulf any water. As long as you haven't ran the engine, you should be fine with that. But, front wheel bearings, you want to kind of pay attention to those too when you first start driving the truck because, a front wheel bearing seal isn't, these are hub bearings on these newer vehicles, and they do a good job of keeping grease in. I guess we're going to find out just how good of a job they do of keeping water out. So, if a vehicle's been in water, those are things we're really going to have to pay attention to. And I don't think you're really going to have any issues, but just make sure you get that rear differential serviced as soon as possible because I guarantee you there's water in it. And folks, I'm going to go ahead and follow up, after that email too. This is one of the things, and I was talking to, I was in the shop yesterday and I was talking to JD and I told him, I said, I really hope that a lot of folks that have issues like this, especially if the engine has engulfed water. I cannot stress, because people drive into water, next thing you know, it sucks it up in the motor and the engine shuts off. Well, you've only got a short period of time to save that engine. The water usually doesn't kill the whole motor. You know what I'm saying? Mechanically, it's still all right, providing the spark plugs get removed, the engine gets cranked over, and the cylinders get dried out. If that happens, then you're probably going to be able to save the engine. But if it sets, let's say, 4 or 5 days with water in those cylinders, it's going to rust and pit the cylinder walls up so bad in these engines that there's really not going to be any saving it. The engine would either have to be replaced or rebuilt. It'd have to be bored and new pistons and rings put in it, or it would consume oil and smoke like crazy. So it really wouldn't be a good idea. But also keep in mind too, and I want to get to your calls here real quick. But folks, listen, if you've got full coverage insurance and you drove through water and you had an issue, whether it got water in the vehicle, it's affected electrical components, or whether it hydroed the motor and shut the engine down and maybe destroyed your engine. If you have full coverage insurance, it will be covered under your comprehensive, But if you've got an older car and it didn't have full coverage on it, you've got to get them spark plugs out of that engine immediately and crank that engine over, get that water flushed out of the engine, maybe get some penetrating oil spray down in each one of the cylinders, put the spark plugs back in and crank it till it starts up. It ain't going to like it, but it's going to have to get started up, and you're going to have to get it to normal operating temperature immediately so it dries those cylinders out. If not, that motor is not going to, it's not going to make it 5, 6, 7 days. It'll rust and pit it up so bad there won't be no fixing it. All right, we're going to go to the phones now. John in Winter Garden. John, tell me what you got going on with your '05 Durango.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. What I have is a 2005 Dodge Durango, and I put a new alternator in it and a new battery in it. Well, it will sit for maybe a day and a half, and the battery will be totally dead. And I can't figure it out. And what's interesting is this is my daughter's vehicle at college, and she could walk away from the vehicle for about 30, 40 yards, and the alarm would start going off. So I don't know if the truck's haunted or what it is.
Now, the alarm thing, I'm going to have to really kind of stick my neck out with that one. But, when you have one that's pulling voltage out of a battery at that rate, we call that a parasitic draw. It's just an excessive draw on the battery itself. John, let me ask you this. Did you have this issue before you replaced this alternator?
Well, that was my first step. The alternator was bad. And no, I did not. I put an alternator in, and then the battery was bad, so then I put a new battery in, and now it just won't. I've had the alternator checked a couple of times, and they said it's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, see,
but it's just interesting. After 2 days, the battery's totally dead.
John, let me tell you, when you take a vehicle to let's say you put an alternator on, like had an alternator put on the vehicle just like you did. All right, then all of a sudden you've got this battery drain. Well, when you take it back to a parts store or whatever, they're going to check that alternator to see if it's charging, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if it's charging, in the world of an auto parts guy, it's got to be good. The problem is, see, an alternator has what we call a one-way diode in it. And it's so that voltage will only travel one direction when the alternator is actually charging. Now, if that diode goes bad, what will happen is, see, an alternator is or a generator. See, an alternator is being turned one way to create voltage, and it can also accept voltage and actually turn into a motor. You see what I'm saying? An alternator can become an electric motor just by applying power to it. And if that was the case, the hit would draw voltage. Now, that's why they put that one-way diode in there, is to prevent that alternator from becoming an electric motor and sucking all the juice out of the battery. Now, if that diode is bad, it's going to charge fine when it's running, but it's not going to stop from pulling the voltage out of the battery. It's wanting to be a big motor, so we got to stop that. And the only way you're going to stop it is to probably put another alternator on it. And, hopefully that parts guy is going to get a good education at your expense. But that's what's most likely going on with it, because if you didn't have this problem beforehand, now don't get me wrong, there's several things that'll pull voltage out of a battery. Your fuse and relay center, there's micro relays in there that'll pull a battery down overnight. Instrument cluster, oh gosh, that thing can be public enemy number one as far as pulling voltage out of a battery. But in your case, if it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and you didn't have the problem before the alternator was replaced, I'm going to go probably with an alternator, John. Let's stick one on there. Let's see how that helps you out, and then give us a holler back and let us know if that helped you, all right?
Thank you so much for your help.
You're certainly welcome. All right, let's see. Who's up next?
Looks like we got James in Apopka coming up next. Go ahead, James.
Hey, Larry. Thanks for taking my call, man.
Hey, no problem.
So, 2017 F-150 on pretty much cold start. Every time it shifts from 3 to 4 or 3 to 5, it's like it's a manual transmission.
Okay. Now, when you say a manual transmission, you mean that it describe the sensation to me. I'm trying to follow you.
Well, it's like it's missing a gear. It's like it just hesitates and then it finally shifts to 4 or 5.
Okay. All right. How many miles do you have on this truck?
75,000.
All right, and this is what engine is in it?
It's got the 3.5 V6.
Okay, EcoBoost.
Yep.
And this has got the 10-speed transmission?
Yes.
Okay. James, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. That's why I decided to pretty much restore and do some updating on my 15. I don't want to mess with the 10-speed transmission. I need dependable transportation.
Right.
I'm going to keep my old 6-speed in that and this King Ranch I got. I just, I told the guys at the shop, I said I'm just going to have some leather redone and just make it a brand new truck again, and I'm just going to keep it for another 150,000 mile. I'm not going to. I said they all look the same anyway. I said I don't want to have to deal with the 10-speed transmission issues. This is the situation, James, with that transmission. Usually when they were pretty new and had less than 20,000 mile on them, people were complaining about the shift patterns and issues as far as missing gears and that sort of thing. And they were taking them back to the dealer. Dealer was doing reflashes on them, and sometimes it helped, sometimes it didn't. But the folks that really had issues were the ones that were trying to tow with them. You would every once in a while you get somebody that didn't have one bit of problem with them, but then you get other folks that are just fighting these things the whole time that they've had them. And
right.
The technical service bulletin, just so you know, with the types of problems that you're having, the first thing that Ford recommends that you do with them is actually rebuild the valve body and replace the solenoids and actually do an adaptive relearn on the transmission. And then if that don't work, of course, then the transmission comes out of the darn thing. Which it just, I really wish that there was better news for you, but these have been an issue. Now, the ones that we had gotten from Jasper, and Jasper's having the awfulest time ever was getting transmissions for these. There's just not enough cores out there, and what's winding up happening is they're actually building a different. Well, they're actually updating the valve bodies in these transmissions whenever they send them out, to the shops to have them installed. Just because of the amount of problems that Ford had with them. Now, one of the updated things that is going into this valve body is what they call a channel plate. It's an updated channel plate, and it's got some different size holes in it for fluid to travel through. And evidently, what they've done is they have decreased the size of those too much whenever the transmissions were being built. And that's why I guess we're having the problems that we're having, because the adaptive learn that these things get after the valve body rebuilds is to increase the line pressure, I guess, to try to help offset the actual real problem. And by using that new channel plate in the transmission valve body, that allows more fluid to pass through it. And I think that's why they're trying to offset it. But as they come from the factory, it's most folks are never going to be happy with it. And if you've already lost a gear, it's not going to get any better until something's done. My advice would be, at this point, if it was mine, I'd have to hook a transmission pressure gauge to it and check the line pressure. And then whenever it goes to look for fourth gear, I'd have to look and see if I'm losing pressure. If I'm losing pressure, that means the third gear's gone. Either a piston's broken, a servo's out of whack, something's not allowing it to actually retain fluid pressure. And if that is the case, and that it's either a band or a piston inside of a clutch drum, or the clutches are smoked. A lot of it you can really tell when you drop the pan on one. If the fluid is pretty much black, then the clutch material is just burned up inside the transmission, and that's due to a hydraulic internal leak somewhere. But the fluid pressure test is going to tell us, whether it's something internally hydraulic or whether it is something electrical. If we don't lose fluid pressure and we're still trying to develop this shift, then that means we've got an electrical, probably a solenoid problem or something like that. But, that's pretty much the procedure that we would have to do to diagnose it, to know exactly what's going on with it. And anybody that deals with transmissions is going to have to do the same thing to really give you an honest answer of what the deal is with it. Yeah. And who knows? It may wind up being a valve in that valve body, that's sticking or something along those lines, because this is supposedly Ford's fix for it, is rebuilding the valve body. Okay. And if that's all that needs to be done, that'd be a whole lot less than having to pull the transmission and rebuild it. You see what I'm saying? So
I got you.
Might be something worth, at least doing a good diagnostic on it and getting those fluid pressure test readings. That right there is going to tell you pretty much which direction you can go with it, what your options are. All right,
I guess
sir?
The only positive is that I bought it as a certified pre-owned from Ford, so I guess we'll see if they can do anything with it.
How long is the warranty good for on it?
It's good for like 3 years. So I've had it for like 6 months now, and it's just always had this hesitation. So I'm going to see if they can do anything with it.
What I'm afraid of, James, is let's say that they do agree and it needs a transmission. The next problem is going to be whether they can get one or not. That I'm not kidding you. This stuff is all 3.5 EcoBoost motors, 10-speed Ford transmissions. All that stuff's on national back order, and Jasper hadn't even got any because they can't get the cores for them. It is a mess.
That's the thing. If they tear it down and down the truck, then I've still got the payment. The truck's sitting there in the lot with no parts. Yeah, I might as well just drive it.
That's what you kind of. I would at least let them check it. let them check it, and then
Yeah.
see what the deal is with it. And if you run into a catch-22 type of situation there, Larry at magicmechanic.com, and I'll see if maybe we can come up with some solutions. And if they can't get a transmission or the parts to fix it, a lot of times, even though it's a Ford extended warranty only, sometimes they will sub those out to Magic Mechanic if they can't get the parts. If the customer,
really?
if the customer is in agreement to use what they consider an aftermarket part, which Jasper is probably better than anything Ford sell you anyway. So that's kind of where we're at. So there may be a possibility if the dealer can't help you, we might be able to if the extended warranty or the ESP policy will allow us to get involved with it.
Sounds really good, Larry. I appreciate it a lot.
Good luck, my friend.
Maybe enough time for one call, Larry. What do you say?
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and take one.
Perfect. David in Leesburg got something going on with his Dodge Ram. Go ahead, David.
Hi, Larry. Thank you for your decades of service to Central Florida for doing the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I've got a 2017 Dodge 2500 heavy-duty two-wheel drive. Got the 392 Hemi motor in it.
All right.
And the other day before the hurricane, my wife was sitting in it having lunch with the engine and the air conditioner running. And all of a sudden, everything in the instrument cluster just started going bonkers. Lights were flashing, gauges were flipping back and forth. The radio volume was going up and down. Everything was just going berserk right in front of her. And it lasted long enough that she was taking video of it with her phone to show me.
Oh, wow.
So she shut the truck off, started it back up, and it worked just fine. Any idea what might cause that or anything else I need to look for on this truck? I just got it a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, David, I'm going to tell you what I would do is, I would disconnect the battery and I would clean the terminals and the post of the battery spotless and reconnect it. And if you see any corrosion in and around the terminals and the battery posts, I'm going to tell you like this, it might be a good idea to consider going ahead and replacing the battery, even if it tested good. And the reason for it being is if you've got corrosion up and around on that battery, that's because of battery acid. And that means that the seal for the battery post in the battery itself is actually leaking acid out of it. It's not a lot, but it's enough to keep you from having a wet and bad connection there with acid on it. So, kind of look for that. That would be the first thing. Now, there's other things. Computers, fuse and relay center. I could go on for 30 minutes on what could be causing an issue like that. But the first place to start when you get something weird like that happening, it sounds like you were getting an intermittent connection, and what was happening was you were getting voltage spikes. And there's only really two things that'll cause that. It's either a bad connection, a battery going wacko on it, or an alternator that's trying to overcharge. And if it cured itself, miraculously just by turning it off and starting it back up, it's telling me it's probably a bad connection. Let's clean those battery terminals good and try it. And if it starts acting up again, you're going to need to get it in by a shop, or if you've got a voltage and amp tester, in your garage at home, hook it up to the battery, and with it sitting there running, maybe with the lights and wipers on and the AC fully loaded down, sit there and watch the voltage and see if it starts spiking just out of the blue. Say it's charging 13 volts and all of a sudden it just starts spiking up to 14 or 15. That right there is your problem, and that would indicate a charging system problem if it's overcharging. It means the regulator and the alternator is taking a dump, and so what's happening is it's becoming intermittent, it's overcharging, and that right there is probably what was causing the gauges and everything else to spike and go crazy. So let's clean the terminals, inspect the battery, make sure it's not leaking a lot of acid. Try it again. If it acts up again, let's try loading it down, put a voltage and amp tester on the battery, And let's just kind of monitor that. If it goes crazy, we're probably looking more along the lines of maybe an alternator. David, thank you so much for the call, sir. Yeah, you can get to me two different ways. You can go to magicmechanic.com, and you can go to the text questions and quotes or whatever, and leave the vehicle information and send it that away. Or, like I said, a lot of folks don't want to have to go to a website. They've been there, done that. Larry at magicmechanic.com. They just put down the year, make, and model and ask me the question. That way it's quick and easy. So either way, magicmechanic.com is their website. Larry at magicmechanic.com. Those come directly to me. So, that way I can answer them a whole lot easier than having to be in front of a PC. Usually when I answer all the emails, I usually do it when I'm in my office at work. So, and during the course of a week, just so folks know, I will answer usually around anywhere. Sometimes the weeks are a little slow. Usually 30 is a slow week. A busy week with emails usually exceeds 100. So, and I answer every one of them. I always tell folks, if you didn't get it, check your spam folder. I try to answer every daggone one that we get. So if you've got an email, a question, and, weekend or anytime, or if you got service coming up on your vehicle and you're trying to get an idea how much money you need to figure on spending on it, or if you've got a ridiculous quote, a $1,500 wheel bearing from your local dealer or something, we can beat the devil out of those types of prices. The thing is, your dealers can't go and use an aftermarket part. They are required by the manufacturer that they sell for to use only their parts. And some of the lists on some of these things, like wheel hub bearings, drive axles, steering racks, struts, if you buy OE for those cars instead of through a leading, aftermarket supplier, you're just spending crazy money for no good reason whatsoever. And, keep this in mind, too. If you've got a vehicle, and let's say it's older than 10 years old, listen, the dealership is not the place you should be taking that vehicle back to. Even their technicians are basically trained to work on, brand new to 4 or 5 year old vehicles. They haven't even been around long enough to work on 10-year-old cars. So that's kind of like not in their wheelhouse. They haven't been trained on that type of thing. So, when it comes to that type of stuff, do not underestimate the aftermarket and your independent auto service centers. They most of them, you find them that's been around for many, many years or decades, and these are folks that's worked in your neighborhood, and they seek out great technicians. What few they are left out here, and those are usually a lot better place to not only fix your car but fix it somewhat affordably and keep it on the road. And here in the next few years, I really think the automotive repair service, the whole entire industry, we're going to be so busy, people trying to avoid electrics and stuff like that, and trying to keep their current vehicles on the road. It's just not, even if they can afford a new car, they don't want one. They don't want the aggravation that goes along with it in a lot of cases. So, it'll be interesting what we're looking at here in the future. But do not underestimate your independent auto service centers. Usually a great group of guys, and I can definitely vouch for that at Magic Mechanic. Folks, our sponsors are very important to the show. We all pitch in to bring you the program every week. So if you enjoy it, please patronize our sponsors and make sure you tell them you heard about them here on the Magic Mechanic Radio Show. Orlando Auto Upholstery, interior, convertible tops, carpet, seats, cars, trucks, vans, SUVs, boats, RVs, ATVs, even commercial industrial seats and upholstery. You can visit them at OrlandoAutoUpholstery.com. And I'll give out their number because it was requested 3 or 4 times last show. 407-898-2355. So if you're in the middle of a restoration project, you need the interior redone, or if you just got some wear on the driver's seat, maybe the leather's starting to collapse a little bit, maybe it's starting to tear, they don't have to rebuild the whole interior. They can actually fix just that area of the seat and match the material, and when they put it back together, be beautiful. Have a little class. Who wants to open up their door and see a great big piece of foam sticking out of their seat? That's ridiculous. Come on. 407-898-2351. That's why we say if your interior looks like it's been mauled by a grizzly bear or just worn out, give Orlando Auto Upholstery a holler. Amsoil synthetic lubricants for your car, truck, van, SUV, boat, motorcycle, tractor, bulldozer, lawn equipment, you name it. Amsoil makes a lubricant for it. The bottom line is, if you got a vehicle, you want it to, last as long as you want it to last. Listen, you can forget about the odometer telling you your car's worn out, or you don't need to be concerned about how many miles are on your vehicle, because the only reason that you'll be using an odometer for anything is to tell you when the next service is due. Because it doesn't matter once you start using Amsoil, because you're not going to wear the stinking thing out anyway. It will last as long as you want it to. It's a unique oil. It's called a polyalpha olefin synthetic. It's got the unique ability to run to heat and friction as opposed to all the other oils in the world. They get hot and thin and run away from what they're supposed to be protecting. Amsoil works completely backwards. That's why you cannot check your oil when the engine is hot. It has to be cold, or the oil will be clinging to heated surfaces inside the engine and show you that you're low on oil. You can only check Amsoil when it's cold. That's the only time it'll release from heated surfaces and run back into the oil pan, so you can check the oil level correctly. If you want to find out more about Amsoil and the fountain of youth for your car, you go to Amsoil.com. Jasper Engines and Transmissions. If you need a motor or transmission, Jasper's come with a 100,000-mile nationwide warranty. If you're going to repower a vehicle, and it's not cheap to repower a vehicle. Some of these transmissions are really expensive. Motors, if you can get them, are pretty pricey as well. And a lot of them come with turbochargers now and everything else, and that all drives the cost of these components up. So if you're going to spend, pretty good money on repowering a fleet vehicle or the family vehicle, you want to make sure that you got one heck of a warranty with it. And, Jasper's going to give you 100,000-mile parts and labor warranty with that engine or transmission. Think about that. That's probably a better warranty than the thing came with when it left the manufacturer brand new. So, if you don't want to take any chances, you definitely want to go with a Jasper when it comes time to repower a vehicle. And last but not least, the Magic Mechanic Auto Service Center located in Orlando, Florida. Engines, transmissions, brakes, suspension, steering, electrical repairs, and, of course, Amsoil synthetic lubricants. You can also visit us at magicmechanic.com and email me directly, Larry, at magicmechanic.com. All right, let's head over to Kissimmee, I guess. Folks, we do have some open lines. If you got a car question, go ahead and hop on board. Nobody's going to want to hear me pick on Josh for the next hour or so we need to get those phone lines filled up. John in Kissimmee, tell me what's going on with your Camry.
Yeah, it all started back in July. We came back from vacation, and we were going to the store that Sunday, and it started slamming into gear. So we brought it to you, and you guys did the Amsoil fluid exchange on the transmission, and now every once in a while the check engine light comes on and it's slamming in the gear. My wife took it to one of these box stores, and they scanned it. It's pulling a P033 knock sensor code.
Mm-hmm.
I took it to my mechanic last Monday. They couldn't get it to duplicate the problem, and they cleared the codes, and they said, well, bring it back next week after the hurricane, because they're just like you. They can't get people, and they got more cars than they can work on. So I just want to know if there was a technical service bulletin, or if you'd ever run onto this with this Camry and this transmission?
Yeah.
Or if it's
All right.
something the computer might be reflashed?
This is the first thing, John. If you don't have the transmission issue with the check engine light off, I think
Right.
I don't think you really have a transmission problem to worry about. Now, let me explain how this works. When a Toyota sets a code, and the code gets stored in the computer system for pretty much anything, that car is going to go into kind of a limp mode, as they call it. It will make the transmission shift funny. It'll reduce engine power. It does a whole bunch of stuff. It does that to try to keep from hurting itself. Now, it being a knock sensor code, see, a knock sensor will cause a vehicle to do all this if for some reason the engine was making some internal noises. And then it would go ahead and go in, it would set a code, and it would go through all this rigmarole where you'd wind up having reduced power and limp mode situation. But now, if the motor sounds okay and it's running fine and everything's good when there is no service light on, it's most likely, and this is what we usually see on a vehicle once it gets some age on it, and depending on where the knock sensor is located on the engine, sometimes the connector where it goes on to the knock sensor it will get corroded, and you'll start getting an intermittent connection. And when that happens, it'll set a code, and then the next thing you know, you've got an issue like you're dealing with, and then miraculously it'll just kind of fix itself. So you know what a knock sensor does. See, it's bolted to the motor, and when it picks up a frequency like a knock or a ticking noise, it will tell the computer system that there's an internal engine issue, whether it be spark knocking from bad gas or water in your fuel, to maybe there's something internal in the engine that's actually causing a problem or getting ready to cause a problem. And then what winds up happening is, see, that knock sensor signal, the frequency that it picks up will turn that into a signal. It goes back to the computer, and then the computer takes that information and it retards the timing. It reduces engine power. It'll actually cause the transmission to shift funny. All these things because of a knock sensor. So, if you're not having a problem with the motor itself, or you don't hear any abnormal noises from it when you're driving it, then most likely it is a bad connector. Those connectors on those knock sensors are notorious on Nissans and Toyotas for some reason or other, and we see that all the time. So if somebody's going to go in there, if it was me, I would disconnect the knock sensor. I would look and see if I had any corrosion on it, number one. If I do, I would probably be inclined to replace the knock sensor and the actual connector and pigtail that goes to it, and just solder the wires back together and put heat shrink on them. That would probably be your best bet. But as far as it having a transmission problem itself, you've already had it serviced with AMSOIL, and those transmissions hold up so well on that vintage Toyota Camry that I doubt very seriously you have any issues with it. I think you got a bad connection on the knock sensor itself, and not that great of a big of a deal. See if you can get it handled there locally. Pass the information that I'm giving you on to the technician that you're dealing with over there in Kissimmee, and if they can't help you, give us a call, and I'm sure JD will try to get you worked into the shop so we can give you a hand with it. I appreciate your call, John. I hope it all works out good for you, buddy.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, John. Again, if you want to call JD sitting there at Larry's office in the Magic Mechanic store, it is 407-629-2661. That'll get you right in touch with JD. 407-629-2661. If you want to talk to Larry right now, WDBO. Let's head on over to Mount Dora, where JR's got a question. Go ahead, JR.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you all being here for us.
Thanks,
I have
JR.
two quick questions, if you don't mind.
All right.
I've got a Kawasaki motor on a ZTR, and all of a sudden, when I try to start it, it won't start unless I pour a little bit of gas into the carburetor. And then it cranks up. Is that possibly a fuel pump?
Okay, you got a Kawasaki motor on what now?
A ZTR mower.
What horsepower is it?
Ooh, it's I think it's 20 horse. I'm not really sure. It's a 54-inch cut.
Okay. JR, see, the thing is, well, if you put some gas in the carburetor and it starts up, does it continue to keep running?
Correct. That's how I have to do it. Instead of choking it, I have to put a little bit of gas in there. And actually, I did some that ether last time, and it turned around, cranked up, and kept on running.
Okay. Listen, I'm going to tell you, I think you may have a bad oil pressure switch. You know where I'm going with this? All right. See, you have
not really, but I'll research it.
Yeah, you'll have to have oil pressure, I believe, on that one. If you get low on oil, or if that switch is sticking, what it does is it won't allow the fuel pump to kick on. You see what I'm saying? So there's usually a safety switch on it to prevent the fuel pump from coming on if there is an issue. With the switch itself, or if it was low on oil, it would prevent the motor from, the fuel pump from supplying it fuel pressure. Now, if for some reason
I disconnected the line to the carburetor and it pumped out fuel,
and it did pump out fuel, well, then I guess we verified that. Then the fuel pump is coming on when you go to cranking it. The only other thing would be if there was something. Has this thing set for a long period of time?
Unfortunately not. I use it for mowing about 20 acres out here. And had nothing but problems with it since it's been new.
All right. On this carburetor, does it have a wire going to it for some reason or other, an electrical wire?
I can take a peek real quick.
Sure.
Yes, in the bottom of it.
Bottom
of the bowl. Yeah, there's two wires.
All right. What that is
green.
That is a fuel shut off. And what that does is when you shut the vehicle off, or the tractor off, that prevents fuel from being able to be sucked in or sucked out of the carburetor. So that right there could very well be the whole entire problem. That's just a fuel cutoff is what it is. If there's if there's wires going to the carburetor, that's also a very common thing that they put on generators and any type of industrial equipment like that. So that right there, you might want to check when you're cranking it to see if you've got ground and power there to actually retract that. It sounds like whatever it is, once the motor starts, it's okay. But to get it started, something's blocking the fuel flow. That's the only thing it can be. So let's take a look at that next. But check the power for it, and you may have to remove it and actually bench test it to see if it's working with power and ground. Quickly, what's your other question?
Brother-in-law's got a tractor that's been sitting in the field for about 5 years. It's a diesel 60-horse John Deere.
Mm-hmm.
Before he wants to crank it up, I told him don't do nothing until I talk to you. Drain the fuel, drain the oil, and what else would you recommend?
Yeah, go ahead and get some fresh fuel in it. And get a couple batteries. You're going to need them, and make sure they're charged good. Connect them together with a couple jumper cables, and then spin it over. Hopefully the glow plugs are lighting up good, and that if it's got a good fuel pump and the injectors are working okay, it'll probably fire up. I mean, never underestimate an old diesel after it's been setting. Some of them will fire up fine after 15 years. I've been amazed. So especially on an older one like that. Good luck, JR, and I appreciate your call, sir.
Hi, Larry. This is Dean in the Villages. With the storms running through Florida, I would be really concerned that people might be purchasing flood-damaged cars in the near future. Was wondering what your take is on what potential customers of these cars should be looking for. Thanks, Larry.
Any of these vehicles that get totaled out by the insurance company, they are going to be auctioned off at an insurance company, and sometimes body shops or individuals will actually buy these cars, and they'll fix whatever's wrong with them, and then they'll go ahead and resell them. But now, to protect the consumer, the vehicle is going, if there was an insurance claim on the vehicle and it was totaled out, then there is immediately a salvage title that goes with that vehicle for the rest of its life. It's not like it used to be. You could get sold a flood car by a local dealer, unknowingly. But in this day and age, what winds up happening is a vehicle gets a salvage title along with it. And, and I'm not going to sit there and say, folks, it doesn't matter. Anything can be fixed. I don't care how bad a car is totaled, and I don't care how submerged it was underwater. Anything can be fixed and fixed properly. The problem that you run into, even if it's a total car, if it's been repaired properly, then it is just as good as one that rolls off the showroom floor. Now it will have a diminished value that goes along with it, just because something that's been wrecked or totaled isn't going to be worth as much as one that's not. But that being said, anything can be fixed. Even a flood car can be fixed. Whoever the mechanic that's repairing it, they may wind up pulling the dash out, replacing instrument cluster, all the electronics, computer system. So if they go into it deep enough, it can be all fixed. But then again, it can be a huge nightmare. But just by pulling a Carfax, and you should be able to see if the vehicle was ever issued a salvage title, and that right there lets the potential buyer beware that there was issues with it. And like I said, if you go and you say you're looking at a 2-year-old Cadillac, it's had some water damage done to it. Hey, if you're going to buy that thing for $10,000-$12,000 less than what the list price is on the rest of them, without a salvage title, you take it to your mechanic. He checks it out. It checks out good. Hey, and it runs and drives out fine. You see no issues with it. It might be the deal of a lifetime. But then again, like I said, it could be a nightmare. But, the salvage title will indicate if that is the case. And remember, that Carfax is worth every dime to see whatever history that there has been on a previously owned vehicle. So it's definitely worth I think it's like $29 now. You put in the VIN number and it gives you all the information, services that's been done to it. Maybe not everything if the guy that owned it previously was a do-it-yourselfer, but most of the stuff on there, recalls, warranty information, stuff like that, and any accidents or any insurance claims is all on that Carfax. So, they can sit there and, any dealer can sit there and tell you, well, it's a certified used car. That doesn't mean nothing, folks. It means absolutely nothing. The worst mechanic in that service department's probably the one that looked at the car, and he's probably been doing this for a month or two, and he's probably passing out burgers before this. So, that's how your cars become certified, So, yeah, don't count on that. You have to do your own investigation, and getting a Carfax isn't the end all of end alls, but it does give you some information there that you otherwise may not get and help you make a good decision, especially if a vehicle has had water damage.
But I'm okay with that.
Can you believe we've actually had we're actually going to have a few days of no rain? Literally, this is just amazing.
Right, I think that's a common thing the meteorologists have been saying after a huge storm like Ian, where it just takes all the moisture in the air and it just takes it off the coast. So we have a lot of dry, cool days ahead of us.
Oh, this is just wonderful weather. But the thing is, the one downside of having all this rain, of course we got to have rain, but is folks that's got their their classic and antique and performance cars sitting in their garage, and nobody takes them out and plays with them when it rains. You know what I'm saying? So you have to wait till you get these nice days to even take them out and drive them. Which I think we're gonna break hours out of the garage this evening and maybe head over to the coast.
Any chance you have a pair of driving gloves? I know that's a big thing overseas.
No,
I
don't. I'm not. I'm not that. Yuppie-ized yet. I don't need gloves to drive a car.
I could be wrong, but I think that's why it's called the glove department in your car.
Yeah. Maybe my mountain bike, but that might not be a bad idea. But as far as driving the car, no, I don't think I need gloves. Don't need heated steering wheels either. You know, that's too girly for me. And who would want to? Why do cars come with heated steering wheels in Florida anyway? You know?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Who knows? Maybe it just comes one-stop shop out of the factory. But from gloves to Grove, let's head up to Groveland where Mark's got a question. Go ahead, Mark. I almost called you Grove. Go ahead, Mark.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey, Mark.
So I've got a 2005 Dodge Durango with about 243,000 miles on it that is a daily driver, about 80 miles round trip. Up until the storm was running great. Moved it to load some stuff in it as the storm was exiting. Started fine, didn't have any issues with it. Wife went out the next morning to go to work and turned the key, and all it does is fast crank.
Okay, say that last part again, Mark. You broke up a little bit.
I apologize. When she went out to start it the next morning to head to work, all it would do is just fast crank.
Okay, so it would crank over, but it wouldn't start, correct?
To me, it seems like it's cranking much faster than it normally would.
Okay.
That makes any sense.
Yeah, no, I see this. I see this all the time. And, you know, usually that is an indication that something has gas washed the cylinders and washed all the oil off of them. A computer can do that, Mark, believe it or not. I've seen it to where people shut a vehicle off, and for some reason or other, the computer will operate the injectors, and literally whatever residual fuel there was in the fuel system will actually dump right straight down into the cylinders. And when that happens, it'll actually wash the oil off of the rings, especially the oil control ring, and off the cylinders. And when you go to start it back up, the daggone thing would sound like that you didn't have any compression. You'd think that you lost a timing chain or a timing belt on a motor. You know,
right.
If that's the case, you know, I will tell you what I normally try, and you may want to try this. Now, this is not saying that your timing chain didn't break on the thing. I mean, it could have with this kind of miles on it. But if that isn't the case, you know, what you should be able to pull the distributor cap, take the distributor cap off, and actually look. I believe that one still does that one still use a distributor? Or
On an 05, I don't know.
That's probably a coil over. Yeah, that's probably a coil over. I was trying to think of an easy way for you to check to see if the camshaft is turning, but you may not be able to. You know,
right.
But if the chain didn't break or the gear round off or something like that, you know, I would usually take and spray a little bit of transmission fluid back up through the intake. You know, hold the throttle body open, which somebody'd have to be inside the car with the key on and the foot to the floor. I take a spray bottle, literally put some tranny fluid in it and spray it back up and through the intake while the engine's being cranked. And, you know, that way that oil can get back into around the pistons, you know, and around the piston rings. And if that's the case, maybe it'll go ahead and fire back up. But we do get vehicles in like that all the time. It's been sitting for a long period of time. And all the oil will come off of those rings. And when it does, there is no compression hardly at all in the motor, not enough for it to actually start. If you can't get it running with that, Mark, I don't know what your mechanical abilities are, but if spraying a little bit of oil back up and through the motor, a little tranny fluid, something along those lines to see if it helps get it started again. If it doesn't do that, then there's going to need to be some testing that's going to be involved with it. When we're talking fuel pressure test, compression test, you know, finding out if the camshaft's turning. So there's a lot of other things that's going to have to be, you know, involved with it. So you can do that. You
certainly
gives you a place to start.
Yeah. Right. A vehicle with that many miles, I don't know that, you know, I'm willing to try just about anything, but I don't know that it's worth, you know, putting tons of money into. I was wondering if it would be fuel pump related, but, you know, that tank we filled that tank ahead of the storm, and there's no way I can drop that tank with that much fuel in it. It would be that'd be a nightmare.
Hey,
for
listen.
sure.
It's a pickup truck. It's a pickup truck. It's always worth something. If it runs and blows cold and stops, hey, it's a pickup truck. There's big demand for it. So, don't ever underestimate what a pickup truck is actually worth. Hey, folks, thanks for tuning in. You listeners, customers, show sponsors are the reason to do the show and have a job. You can tune in every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time in Central Florida on 107.3 FM, HD Radio 96.52, and AM 580. Worldwide at WDBO.com. And click Listen Live, or just tell your smart speaker to play WDBO Radio every Saturday at 3 p.m. And if you need help with your vehicle, you can always call Magic Mechanic at 407-629-2661. Visit our website, magicmechanic.com, or you can also email your car questions directly to me, Larry, at magicmechanic.com. Until next week, be safe in and out of your car, and we'll see you back here next Saturday at 3 p.m.